Good evening. What a day. This word is often overused, but the past 12 hours has been truly unprecedented. A Prime Minister in a make-or-break showdown with his MPs after very public demands for his resignation. His cabinet unanimously coming out in support. A former prince publicly scolded by his nephew and by Buckingham Palace. And this all revolves around one man, the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who was allowed to sexually abuse young girls for several years.
After years of being kept apart, we're standing together.
Standing together.
Because this girl deserves the truth.
Because she deserves the truth.
Because we all deserve the truth.
Some of his survivors featured in the Super Bowl halftime show, demanding the full truth. They feel they've been ignored for too long. That's why Keir Starmer is under pressure for deciding to appoint Peter Mandelson as UK ambassador to the US, even though he knew about his links to the disgraced billionaire. That's why Buckingham Palace interrupted Prince William's trip to Saudi Arabia to make clear that the King will support any police investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Let's get started with this report from our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, who's in the Saudi capital, Riyadh.
You wonder if this was the final straw. Just hours after the King was heckled again about his brother, Buckingham Palace released their statement. The King has made clear, it said, in words and through unprecedented actions, his profound concern at the allegations which continue to come to light in respect of Mr Mountbatten Windsor's conduct. While the specific claims in question are for Mr Mountbatten Windsor to address, if we are approached by Thames Valley Police, we stand ready to support them, as you would expect. As was previously stated, Their Majesty's thoughts and sympathies have been and remain with the victims of any and all forms of abuse. This is what it was referring to. Emails that suggest that when Andrew was a UK trade envoy, he shared information with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Thames Valley Police say they're now assessing that claim. There's been no response from Andrew. There's been so much speculation about whether the royal family have in any way put pressure on Andrew to talk publicly. Within this statement, they do talk about questions that maybe he has to answer, suggesting that possibly behind the scenes there have been some very difficult conversations. But ultimately what this statement says is the royal family know they cannot stay silent on this issue, and that's because it risks further damage to the wider monarchy. We'd already had another significant statement even before William arrived for this important diplomatic trip to Saudi Arabia. A palace spokesperson unexpectedly telling us the Prince and Princess have been deeply concerned by the continuing revelations. Their thoughts remain focused on the victims. Released partly in the hope that they could maybe draw attention back to his Saudi visit.
It's about the way in which monarchs and royalty inhabit two different realms. One is the personal, you're an individual, you're a human being, but the other is the symbolic realm. You are representing not just yourself, you're representing your family, you're representing a constitutional dispensation, and you're representing a country, a state, and a nation. And getting all, I mean, it is fiendishly difficult to get this right.
As Buckingham Palace prepared to press the button on their statement, William was rubbing shoulders with his counterpart, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. An extra level of hospitality from one future king to another at what is a difficult time. In some ways, this a display of what the royal family should be about, that global reputation now being threatened by the allegations facing his own uncle. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News in Riyadh.
Well, let's look more closely at the allegations that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor shared confidential reports with Jeffrey Epstein. Here's our data and forensics editor, Tom Cheshire.
Police are assessing new claims about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as a result of these emails from the latest Epstein files. So what's this all about? Well, for a long time, Andrew, Prince Andrew as he was back then, was a trade envoy for the British government. In November 2010, Andrew appears to have forwarded government reports to Jeffrey Epstein, only minutes after they were sent to him by an aide. There were visit reports for Vietnam, Singapore, Hong Kong and Shenzhen as a result of his trip to Southeast Asia. This is when Andrew is believed to have been staying at Epstein's townhouse in New York. Then, around a month later, there's another email. This is an email sent by Andrew to Jeffrey Epstein. And he attaches what he says is a confidential brief about international investment opportunities in Helmand Province in Afghanistan. He writes, "I am going to offer this elsewhere in my network, including Abu Dhabi, but would be very interested in your comments, views or ideas as to whom I could also usefully show this to attract some interest." Andrew was forced to step down as a trade envoy in 2011, mainly as a result of his continuing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, who'd be convicted in 2008 for soliciting child prostitution. Thames Valley Police have said they're looking into these new claims. "We can confirm receipt of this report and are assessing the information in line with our established procedures." Andrew denies wrongdoing, and we don't know how sensitive, how confidential these documents were. But it's worth bearing in mind that Peter Mandelson had to resign from the House of Lords and is facing a police investigation because of claims that he passed on government information to Jeffrey Epstein. The Prince and Princess of Wales put out a statement saying they were deeply concerned by the ongoing revelations as the Prince made a trip to Saudi Arabia. Now, they might have been worried about the embarrassment, but it just shows how vast Jeffrey Epstein's network was, how far it spread. The Saudi Arabia is in these files too, specifically its Crown Prince and de facto ruler, Mohammed bin Salman. This is a photo from the latest release of Epstein and MBS, as he's commonly referred to. We don't have any context for it, and merely appearing in the files is no suggestion of wrongdoing. We can't say for sure, but it appears to have been taken on November the 8th, 2016, based on other documents in the Epstein files. Epstein also talked of his relationship with MBS in this email, in which he suggested the Crown Prince could vouch for him. Tell him to ask Nathan Myhrvold or bin Salman. Now again, just appearing in these files is no evidence of wrongdoing, and we can't tell whether that's Jeffrey Epstein boasting or whether there was a more concrete relationship. For all the drip of news scandal, at the heart of this, though, are the survivors. And they chose the biggest American platform, a Super Bowl television advert, to put out this message.
Because this girl deserves the truth.
Because she deserves the truth.
Because we all deserve the truth.
And so we're left in this slightly paradoxical situation. We have millions of documents, a string of scandals, and the sense from the survivors that we still do not have the full picture.
Let's go live to our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, who joins us from Riyadh. Rhiannon, we've been hearing, and in your report, that both William and King Charles distancing themselves from this scandal.
Yeah, and look, I expect to be talking to you this evening about the importance of why I'm here in Saudi Arabia and the significance of William's trip. And yet it is because of statements directly from Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace that we are again talking about the Epstein files. It was extraordinary this morning to be at the ambassador's residence and the Kensington Palace spokesperson saying, yep, we directly want to address the issue of Epstein. I think they were hoping that they could maybe kind of move that to one side as we head into the next couple of days. But now, of course, we've had this incredible statement from Buckingham Palace. In a way, the first time that the royal household have said, yep, we know that Thames Valley Police are now looking at these allegations against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and if they need our help, then we will do that. Now, why has this all happened? I've been speaking to palace sources who, in essence, have told me that over the weekend it was as though something had shifted. New facts meant that there needed to be a new kind of response. That is why we're seeing the statement that we've seen this evening. But it has made me look back, really. At the heart of these new allegations really is the whole purpose of the royal family. If Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was using his royal role to help Jeffrey Epstein, that again is a very, very serious allegation and goes to the real heart of what the royal family should be all about. Also, don't forget, in the past it was the Queen Elizabeth, Andrew's mother, who was having to deal with this issue. Now it is his brother, and I think what the palace are hoping tonight through this statement is to show that the king is not afraid again to show really robust leadership as much as he can, with all those questions still swirling around in what are really challenging family circumstances as well.
Rhiannon, thank you so much for bringing us up to date. Now, in America, it's known as pleading the fifth, invoking the right to avoid answering questions that could lead to the admission of a crime. And that's what Ghislaine Maxwell did today when she was interviewed by members of the US House Oversight Committee via video link to her prison. Her attorney released a statement saying he'd advised her to take the 5th during her appearance. But David Oscar Marcus added that Ms. Maxwell is prepared to speak fully and honestly if granted clemency by President Trump. Some may not like what they hear, but the truth matters. For example, both President Trump and President Clinton are innocent of any wrongdoing. Ms. Maxwell alone can explain why, and the public is entitled to that explanation. Well, let's go to the US and speak to our James Matthews, who joins us live from Washington. So, James, this is a strategy adopted by Ghislaine Maxwell, advised by her attorney. I guess the big question is it this strategy likely to work?
Yeah, hi, Yalda. I suppose that's the question, isn't it, for President Trump? That's who she is counting on in all of this. Critics were lining up after that appearance. I was on Capitol Hill, and the first thing they said was, look, we shouldn't be hearing about any of the content of what we heard in there. What happened was that a Republican member of the committee came out and said that look, you give her clemency and the whole story will be told. And Democrats were saying that was a tactic to get her story or to get that plea into the public arena. We are told that she was, in terms of her demeanour, she was unrepentant. There was no remorse, robotic, in the words of one of the Democrat members. They reckon that that statement that neither President Trump nor President Clinton were guilty of wrongdoing, they saw that as a play for both sides of the political divide in all of this. But that pleading the 5th, the reason given for that, Yalda, was that she was still going through a legal process. There was still an appeal of sorts. It should be pointed out, her appeals have already gone all the way through the Supreme Court and knocked back. So, you know, the woman who we've seen in the Epstein files in that orange jumpsuit, that's footage from a cell in 2020, you know, clearly she was sending a message to Donald Trump. She's had a message back from Sky and Amanda Roberts, I can tell you, Yalda. Sky Roberts, the brother of Virginia Giuffre, they're furious. They say that this is a woman who created the template for suffering of their sister and others. They write a letter to Ghislaine Maxwell. They say this: Ghislaine, you deserve to spend the rest of your life in a jail cell, trapped in a cage forever, just like you trapped your victims.
Yeah, and all the while, James, I mean, she's refusing to speak, but the demands, the calls for Andrew, as well as King Charles even, to give evidence are growing louder and louder.
Yeah, King Charles was brought into the conversation today. I was speaking to Ro Khanna. He's a congressman on that committee, a Democrat, one of those who was behind the bill, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, that prompted the publication of these files. Have a listen to what he had to say.
Well, the king has to answer what he knew about Andrew. And just stripping Andrew of a title is not enough. I mean, Andrew needs to come before our committee and start answering questions. I mean, look, if you have allegations of raping a young girl, I don't think the appropriate punishment is you no longer get to be a prince. There's got to be more than that.
Do you think the royal family must have known something they're not telling us?
They need to answer, the king and queen, and I don't understand. I mean, I don't understand the British custom, but what's up with this, that you're going and someone's asking the queen a question, the queen is offended that she's being asking a question? I mean, come on. She wears the same clothes, she eats the same food, she's just a human being. She needs to answer the same questions anyone does.
There you go.
I mean,
maybe this
there
will be the end of the British.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry,
James.
Yalda. Yeah, he added maybe. Yeah, he added that maybe this will be the end of the British monarchy. I mean, strong words from Ro Khanna, a congressman. You know, maybe that's overreaching rather, but that sentiment and what he had to say, that's not what the royal family wants to hear in a year when King Charles, of course, is going to be on a state visit to the United States in just a few months' time. Questions that Ro Khanna wants answered, questions that will surely be put to King Charles when he comes here, if not long before. And the Americans are rather puzzled, you know, for all the Buckingham Palace statement today and all the talk of doing something definitive and, you know, being on the front foot in terms of tackling this as an issue for the royal family. Why weren't these questions asked so long ago when Epstein was in or invited to Buckingham Palace, when he was on the Balmoral estate in the midst of the royal family?
James, as always, thank you so much for all of your reporting. Now, the shadow of Jeffrey Epstein hanging over that royal trip to Riyadh and over in Washington. And it's dominating here in London too. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is just about clinging on. He decided to appoint Peter Mandelson as the UK's ambassador to Washington. And today, the Scottish Labour leader became the most senior member of his party to demand his resignation. He appears to have survived for now. That's after a crucial meeting with his MPs and after all of his cabinet expressed their public support. Just have a listen to how the day unfolded.
The distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change. We cannot allow the failures at the heart of Downing Street to mean the failures continue here in Scotland.
He has acknowledged the decision to appoint Mandelson was a mistake. He has apologised, rightly so, to the victims.
I announced our plans to roll out even more new free breakfast clubs across the country that will be a huge boost to working parents. That's what we ought to be focused on as a government. That's what people want to see.
The Prime Minister has my full support as the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, and I know he has the vast majority of colleagues' full support as well, because we've got a country to run.
How embarrassed are you by these WhatsApps between you and him?
I'm embarrassed to have known Peter Mandelson. I hope that, more than anything else actually in those messages, I hope I haven't caused either embarrassment or discomfort for my cabinet colleagues.
Well, that was our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is here with me now. And John, we're just hearing there Wes Streeting, a possible leadership contender, speaking there and ending that report, having to explain his relationship with Peter Mandelson. Keir Starmer having to do the same as well. What did he say to MPs?
So he was addressing the Parliamentary Labour Party. Meets every Monday, but the Prime Minister doesn't normally go that often, but he's been twice this year now. Basically, it was not quite an apology, but an admission about things going wrong. He started off by saying he took full responsibility for the Mandelson appointment as ambassador. That decision was wrong, he admitted. He went on to talk about Morgan McSweeney, who quit on Sunday. And then he admitted relations with his MPs had not been open or inclusive enough. And turning in on ourselves is turning in on the country. And he said he wasn't prepared to walk away from his mandate or the country. And he finished off by talking about the reform, fighting against Nigel Farage and Reform UK. As long as I have breath in my body, I'll be in this fight. And he also talked about the attack by Mohammed Sarwar. Anna shared his thoughts today. Well, that's a bit of an understatement. But it was a fighting performance by all accounts. 44 questions he took from MPs. That's an awful lot for a meeting like that. It was an absolute blow for Sarwar to attack him in the way he did. But he managed to get the cabinet to a man and a woman to back him with statements. Now, the suggestion that was organised by David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, hitting the phones and getting all those cabinet ministers to back him. And I think the majority of MPs at that meeting tonight were relatively sympathetic. The thing is, they don't want a leadership election. They don't want to go through what the Tories have been through 3 or 4 times in recent years, because it would just cause chaos. Now, we've just been listening to Wes Streeting. He, I would say, is a bit damaged by his association with Mandelson. And I thought he was a bit squirming a bit there, wasn't he? Angela Rayner is the Red Queen. She turned up at the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting in a pink trouser suit, looking very chipper, smiling, saying hello to everyone. So she's had a good day, you could say. Prime Minister lives to fight another day, but of course he's, his critics will say he's on borrowed time. There's a by-election on the 26th of February. Then there is the not just the local elections in England, but the Welsh elections, and of course those Scottish elections. What Labour in Scotland hoped was that those elections in Scotland would be about the performance of the SNP in Scotland, not about the performance of Sir Keir Starmer's government. That clearly has not worked.
So I guess the big question now then, John, is he likely to survive the week?
Yes, I think so.
OK.
I mean, it would take something big, like a cabinet minister resigning or something like that. And the signs are, after today, that's probably not going to happen. Now, a few years back, when Boris Johnson was on the ropes, he was absolutely shell-shocked and knocked by, first of all, the resignation of Sajid Javid, and then Rishi Sunak, who later became Conservative Prime Minister. So long as the Cabinet stays with him and his backbenchers are a bit less mutinous than they were, there'll always be the usual suspects who call for every Prime Minister to go. One Labour MP tonight talked about the film, the Custer's Last Stand, you know, that film. Was it called Little Bighorn? I think it was, wasn't it, that battle? I don't think it's quite Keir Starmer's last stand just yet.
Thank you, as always, John. Thank you. Appreciate it. Now, you're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme, a life sentence. Reaction after China critic Jimmy Lai is sentenced to 20 years in prison in Hong Kong.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
It's Western governments are leading condemnation of China after Beijing critic Jimmy Lai was sentenced to 20 years in jail in Hong Kong. The 78-year-old, who's a British citizen, was earlier found guilty of conspiring to collude with foreign forces and publishing seditious materials. The founder of the now-closed Apple Daily newspaper was a prominent voice in favour of Hong Kong's mass anti-government protests in 2019. His son, Sebastian Lai, told us that this was effectively a life sentence. Just have a listen.
I think if more isn't done to fight for his release, he will very likely die in prison. He's got heart issues, he's got diabetes. The last 5 years he's been kept in solitary confinement. I mean, these are inhumane conditions for any prisoner. Yeah, I haven't seen my father in the last 5 years. I hear how his health has deteriorated only through other people, how he's lost 10 kilos over the last year alone. And it's incredibly heartbreaking, but it's kind of these bittersweet moments where you know that though his health is failing him, his spirit and his faith is still strong, and he's still holding on.
Sebastian Lai, the son of Jimmy Lai, speaking to Sky earlier. Well, joining me now is Mark Clifford, a friend and biographer of Jimmy Lai. Thank you very much, Mr. Clifford, for joining us here on the programme. I mean, as Sebastian Lai said there earlier, and I've spoken to him on numerous occasions in the past, this is effectively a life sentence. Jimmy Lai is almost 80 years old, so giving him another 20 years means he, won't survive this sentencing.
It's outrageous. He's a man of peace, of nonviolence, never wanted to do anything other than run his newspaper and take the Chinese at their word that Hong Kong's freedoms could continue. We see that's, he's ended up in jail. And as you say, it's effectively a life sentence. And
in many ways, this isn't, frankly, just about Jimmy Lai. It symbolises so much more. It's, frankly, an end of an era. Any hope that Hong Kong, will survive this as a society, it has gone out the window. It is now firmly under the boot of Beijing.
Yeah, absolutely. Before China took Hong Kong back from Britain after 156 years as a successful colony, it promised the moon to the Hong Kong people. They'd have all their freedoms and more, including free press, free assembly, freedom of worship. Those are all gone, as you say. And it's sad. It's a different China now, too. It's a China that prizes stability above prosperity. I can't think of another place in the world that has seen its freedoms so quickly and so thoroughly snuffed out, absent a war or something, in the last century. I mean, it's remarkable.
Yeah,
and obviously very, very troubling, but yeah.
Yeah, and Jimmy Lai, I mean, I've interviewed him many times in the past, was, a product of a democratic society like Hong Kong. That's what his paper symbolised. That's what his voice was when he joined those anti-government demonstrations. He spoke very freely at the time. And for the outcome to now be this is quite shocking.
It's also so ironic. He's a British citizen. He's never had another passport since he fled China as a young boy. He believed so much in the values of freedom that he enjoyed as a British colonial citizen. And he looked to Prime Minister Keir Starmer for help. The Chinese have gotten a nice mega embassy in London. The Prime Minister got his trip to Beijing, but Jimmy's still, and this is almost a slap in the face, another slap in the face to the Prime Minister for this sentencing to happen just days after he left China. So it's very disconcerting. I think we now need to help the Chinese understand that Jimmy's more trouble in prison than out, and they gain very little from seeing him die behind bars.
Yeah, to that point, I spoke to Sebastian Lai the day that Keir Starmer was in Beijing, and he told me that he had basically been given reassurances by the British government that this issue would be raised. Either the Chinese have ignored these sorts of pleas from the Prime Minister, or, perhaps it wasn't raised in the kind of way that Sebastian was told it would be.
I mean, I think that's the real question. Is this a box-ticking exercise, or is the Prime Minister and his cabinet serious about really pushing hard on this issue? Again, I feel that they gave the Chinese a great deal of face in the form of this, wonderful, lavish mega embassy in the heart of London. And they got a few bottles of whiskey in return, and Jimmy still sits in jail. I have been pleased. Yvette Cooper's statement right after the sentencing was very action-oriented, and so perhaps it's not the kind of thing that happens in a day or a week, but that we will see some way of getting Jimmy out. And I should also mention, it's not just Jimmy. There's 600 bars. Jimmy symbolizes, epitomizes what's great about Hong Kong and actually what's gone so terribly wrong. I have 6 other, I was on the board of directors and have, besides Jimmy, there's 6 other colleagues who've just been sentenced to 7 to 10 years. It's pretty grim.
And I guess, you say you're hopeful that you may see Jimmy or some of the others out. But is this China's way of sending a very clear message to anyone who speaks up in Hong Kong against these national security laws, against the tightening of the grip, that this will be the punishment and the outcome?
Absolutely. The old Chinese cliche, kill the chicken to scare the monkeys. I think that's certainly what's happening here, and I think everybody gets the message. And I think we have to applaud Jimmy in particular for his bravery. He hasn't caved. He was on the witness stand for 52 days during this 2-year trial, and he's standing strong. I hope he gets to enjoy freedom, enjoy his last years with his family, that he can join Sebastian and his family in Britain. Sebastian says, "Bring my dad home." And I think we really have to look to Keir Starmer and his government to keep the pressure up on the Chinese, to let them know it won't be business as usual as long as Jimmy and others are behind bars in Hong Kong.
Mr. Clifford, I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for your interest.
Just want to bring you up to date on another developing story now. The US TV presenter Savannah Guthrie has just posted a new video online saying her family is at an hour of desperation in the search for her missing mother. Nancy Guthrie's alleged abductors set a ransom deadline for Monday. The 84-year-old was last seen at her Arizona home on the 31st of January.
Hi there, everybody. I wanted to come on and just share a few thoughts as we enter into another week of this nightmare. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for all of the prayers and the love that we have felt, my sister and brother and I, and that our mom has felt. Because we believe that somehow, some way, she is feeling these prayers and that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place. We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation, and we need your help.
That was Savannah Guthrie, the TV presenter, talking about her mother, Nancy Guthrie, who was abducted. And today was the deadline. She's putting out a video describing it as an hour of desperation. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, lots more coming up. Ukraine's sports minister hits back at the FIFA chief's suggestion of lifting Russia's ban.
the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
You're watching The World. Ukraine's sports minister has hit back at FIFA boss Gianni Infantino's claims that Russia's ban has achieved nothing and should be lifted. Here's what Mr. Infantino said to me last week and Ukraine's response. Just have a listen.
I mean, in Ukraine, Russia, we spent 40 years now in Europe. 40 years. Just, sanctioning Russia, criticizing Russia. How do we think we can solve a war if we don't engage, if we don't speak, if we don't try to understand, if we don't put people in the room? We don't. That's my conviction.
But earlier you said that we should re-engage with Russia. Are you saying that you would look at lifting the ban on Russia?
Oh, definitely, we have to, yes. Yes. At least at youth level, for children, at least.
Is this something that you would look at in the near future? Changing the dynamic, despite the criticism?
Yes, I think we have to look at it. I think we have to look at it because this ban has not achieved anything. It has just created more frustration and hatred with girls and with boys. And I feel that having girls and boys from Russia being able to play football games in other parts of Europe would help.
It's a very strange position. Nothing changed. This condemnation of all of the world, of sports community, is very important for international pressure on aggressor. If we start to make our policy softer, what sign do you give for other organizations? The ban, it's an important part of international efforts to stop the aggressor. It's a crime, and you want to justify, you want to legitimize this crime.
You called Gianni Infantino infantile. Do you have some particular concerns about his character, to use a word like that?
I say that his action looks irresponsible and looks as infantile. I have met with a guy, he was 9, if I'm not mistaken, who lost his legs because of the Russian rockets. He just wanted to play football, as Infantino said.
He's never been to Ukraine during the war. Would you want him to come and see it for himself?
Yes, with pleasure.
But he's never tried to come?
No, as I know, no.
European governments advocate, many of them, for Russian teams to be banned from sport. But some of those governments are still doing business with Russia. They're still selling things to Russia. They're still buying things from Russia. Is that wrong?
Yes, of course, I think it's wrong, but we can see now it's became less and less. The more and more sanctions is improved, and Russia became more and more isolated.
You had a statement from many governments critical of the Paralympics lifting the ban on Russia.
Yes.
Are you hoping to get a statement from governments opposing football teams being restored by FIFA?
Yes, yes, and I think we are close to it.
Ukraine sports minister speaking to our Rob Harris at the Winter Olympics, and Rob joins me now. I mean, Rob, you push back there, on the sports minister of Ukraine, because of course he's criticising Infantino for saying this, but we're seeing business still flowing and the sanctions being evaded with the Russians.
Yes, £1.2 billion in exports from the UK still to Russia. And I did put it to Matt Rabin, the sports minister, that is Gianni Infantino right? Banning teams has not suddenly stopped the war. But you hear from people like the EU Commissioner for Sport, Glenn Mislev, he says, well, it ignores the real deep pain caused by the war if you do let Russian teams back in. But we do see governments softening their positions. Originally, the UK government was completely opposed to Russians and Belarusians being at the Olympics. Well, they're OK with neutrals being there. They're originally opposed to any Russians or Belarusians competing at Wimbledon. They were in 2022. They rescinded that ban. So you can see Ukraine's trying to keep the pressure up as things are changing with moves to bring Russia back in. It was the talk of the Winter Olympics last week, your interview with Gianni Infantino, and the IC president, Kirsty Coventry, was talking about sport needing to be neutral ground. Last year, she told me she is against really banning countries, particularly she's from Zimbabwe. She sees there are many conflicts in Africa that people could point to as a need to ban those countries. So sport is confronting this question. Gianni Infantino really getting in ahead of it, because whether it's an expectation that there will be this long-anticipated peace deal, but a recognition of the fact that perhaps it's hard to maintain these bans while being consistent in your positions around the world with so many conflicts. And Russia's men's national team, well, they are banned from FIFA competitions, UEFA competitions. They have been playing friendlies against Chile, Peru, Serbia, even from Europe. So there isn't a universal opposition to Russia being banned still from international football. And FIFA can say this now because the next Men's World Cup is not until 2030 after this one, so there's some time off until they'll have to start qualifying. But certainly, this is one of the big issues that will be coming up this week, we expect, at least on the sidelines of the UEFA Congress in Brussels, as they all gather for their annual meeting, as they do perhaps try to navigate the fact that some countries might be really wanting that ban to stay in place, others less so. And as you heard from the Ukrainian sports minister, he would want a statement from European governments uniting, as they did for the Paralympics, to say Russia's teams must stay banned.
Yeah, I mean, Rob, you know, we heard from Gianni Infantino last week, who said, I don't believe in bans. I hate boycotts. I don't like bans. I don't like talk of the football in North America being banned or boycotts. I guess, is it then inevitable? Everything that you're talking about, they don't even have to qualify. I mean, the next World Cup is 2030. There's been a lot of talk around whether Israel, for example, should be banned. We're now going to see Russia slowly creeping back into the fold.
Yes, and we have to look back to why the ban was imposed in 2022, right at the start of the all-out invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And there's a lot of political pressure, particularly coming from Brussels, on UEFA and FIFA. So they had to find a particular reason. There's nothing like force majeure in the FIFA statutes to impose a ban. But what it was discovered to be was later on, as it went through the sports courts as Russia appealed it, was the fact that effectively it was because European teams were refusing to host Russian matches and to, you know, even play them on neutral territory as well. So it was an integrity issue. Whereas for different other sports, they put different bans in for different reasons. The Paralympics told me it was because they believed that Russian athletes were using sport to promote the war on behalf of the government. So they do have to find these technicalities and reasons. The IOC has the ban in place on Russia because of a breach of the Olympic Charter, because Russia incorporated sports entities within Ukraine into Russia. But notably, in the opening ceremony on Friday night, when I was in Milan, the IOC president, Kirsty Coventry, did not mention the Olympic truce, something that the IOC aligns with the United Nations. Perhaps they're toning down perhaps some of that rhetoric where they get involved in politics, the United Nations, to perhaps just stick to sport.
Rob, as always, thank you so much for all of your reporting. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, I'll speak to one of the archaeologists who've given a face to a so-called vampire who lived 400 years ago.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Scrutinise wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
You're watching The World. We're going to go back about 400 years now to the time that this man lived and died in what's now Croatia. Locals believe he was a vampire. His remains were discovered beneath a fortress in the east of the country. Archaeologists say after he died, his body was exhumed, beheaded and buried again to prevent him returning from the dead. Fast forward to now, and scientists and graphics experts have digitally rebuilt his likeness. To no doubt there's a bit of guesswork, but this, they say, is pretty close to how a so-called vampire appeared while alive in the 15th or 16th century. Well, archaeologist Natasha Sarkic was involved in the excavation. Thank you so much, Natasha, for joining us here on the programme. Just tell us a bit more about this man or this vampire and how you've managed to put all of this information together.
Hello, thank you for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here. Well, first of all, we have to understand that the term vampire is something that we used just to describe what was believed in that time. Of course, there is no real vampires, but this was a strong belief that exists even nowadays in Balkans, that some people can turn as an angry spirit that's in some way can hurt the livings. So there was a lot of measurements of prevention, and what we know the most is from Hollywood's movies, like placing some object in the heart. But there was actually many others, and one of them is being displacing the body or removing parts. Like one of the most common is removing the head, in order to prevent this disease to raise up from the grave.
So this particular man, he was sort of his body, his head, essentially he was beheaded?
His head was removed and placed some 30 centimeters away from original position, and his thorax, the middle of his body, was turned upside down, while the rest of his body was in anatomical position, which is telling us that there was human intervention. That means that the body was intentionally attached, was removed in order to prevent this possible lifting from the grave. And additionally, this individual had a lot of signs of violence, and it was killed just before the cause of death was actually violent death.
So the information you have based on the body is that he lived quite a violent life?
Yes, exactly, because we find at least 4 different violent encounters in different periods of time, and the last one was fatal because he had 2 blows in the head from behind, kind of ambush probably, or maybe battle. And in this one he didn't survive because there were very severe hits in the head and on the backside, but he already had like injuries that were still in process of fusion at the moment of death. We know that he had a big scar on the face that was making this person very scary. There was his ribs were still in process of fusion at the moment of death, so we know that he had violent encounter just before, few months before he died, and also his ankle was broken, and healed improperly, so he was probably walking in a weird way because of this injury. So there were a lot of things that were probably very scary about this man.
Yeah, and just very briefly, I have about 30 seconds to go, but have you found similar bodies to his?
In Croatia, at this moment, no, but we have historical confirmations that there were actually beliefs in vampire, and there was even intervention over a body in a similar period of time.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Natasha, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's it for this edition of The World. We're back again tomorrow night from 9 o'clock. Anna Botting is up next with The Wrap.